call the Thursday, June 15th special Town of Rome Board meeting to order. Roll call starting on my left.
Capel here.
Minter here.
Jumati here.
Cole here.
Bowerheit here.
Certify the posting of the meeting.
I certify that on Friday, June 9th, 2023, the agenda for the Town of Rome Special Board Meeting for Thursday, June 15th, 2023 was posted at the Rome Town Hall at 1:58 p.m., Quick Trip LLC at 2:30 p.m., Nakusa Port Edward State Bank at 2:38 p.m., and emailed to the Wisconsin Rapids Tribune at 1:53 p.m.
Okay, thank you. Citizen comments. During the citizen comment, or do we have any? Oh, I'm sorry. Approve the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second the motion.
We have a motion to approve the agenda and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Citizen comments. Do we have any orange cards?
No. Comment cards received.
Okay. The board will also take comment from the public on the agenda items as called by the chair, but not during the citizen comment. Please note that once the board begins discussion on any agenda item, no further comment will be allowed from the public on that issue. And I just want to make a small, quick statement here. The presentation this evening this afternoon was requested by NextEra Energy. We will be having the same exposure to this information as all of you here for the very first time. So we do appreciate the interest and happy that you have all joined us. Please understand that this initial information will generate many questions for you as for the rest of the board, because again, this is the very first time we are hearing it. So please understand that we will have just as many questions. So please understand that for the short time that we do have with them this evening, because this is their meeting and ours, that we would like to have a chance to ask our questions, and then what time remains, we'll also have questions from you. So thank you. Discussion and possible action on the following items. Number 6, discussion and possible action, presentation from Danilo? Yep. All right. Cabrera, NextEra Energy, regarding installation of a solar array in the town of Rome. Come up.
Mel, can you just make sure the red light is on? So
Yes, the red light is on.
Great.
All right. Good afternoon, and thank you for having us. My name is Danilo Cabrera. I work for NextEra Energy Resources as a renewable energy developer.
Can you make sure the button's on, please, and then just speak a little bit louder for all of us in the room? Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And I have my colleague here, Matt Johnson, who also works for NextEra Energy as a community engagement manager. He will also be helping me field questions and handling the second half of the presentation. So first, we're here to talk about a potential solar project in the town of Rome called Camelot Energy Center. By NextEra Energy, it was identified as a good area to do a solar project. Usually there's 3 components that we look at: land, connection to the grid, and a customer to be able to buy the energy from the project. A little bit about our company. Here we go. Our corporate values, as you can see there, are our commitment to excellence. We treat people with respect, and we do the right thing. Right? We are the largest renewable energy company in the world. No one produces more renewable energy from solar and wind than we do. We've been doing this for over 2 decades. Right? And through this, right, we've learned a lot throughout the process how to establish these projects effectively and efficiently. Right? NextEra Energy is a publicly traded company. It's a Fortune 200 company. It's mostly comprised of two entities: Florida Power and Light, which is the largest utility in Florida and one of the largest utilities in the country, and NextEra Energy Resources, which is the renewable energy development company, which is us, this side of the company. Right? We've been investing in Wisconsin since 2007. You can see here, $2.5 billion. We've had over 510 employees to support the different projects we've done here. An annual payroll of $122.5 million, and the property taxes paid have been over $9.3 million. We have several operational assets. We'll only talk about the operational ones right now, but we have one operational wind, Butler Ridge, We have one utility solar scale, which you could also see in the fact sheets that we gave you in the back. We have one nuclear site, and we currently have 5 projects in development. In development means different phases. It could be very early, like this is a very early project, or it could be in construction. So those are not operational, but that's what you see with the 5 in different parts of Wisconsin. With the Camelot Energy Center project, located here in the town of Rome, it will be approximately $250 million in capital investment. It's a 200 megawatt project. So when we speak of megawatts, that's about powering 50,000 homes equivalent. Okay, we'll be connecting to the America Transmission Company substation, Saratoga. And if everything goes according to timeline, it will be operational in the beginning of January 2027. You know, that's give or take, right, depending on the timeline. We have a slide here just to explain how this works. Is the solar project would grab the sunlight, go into a DC AC inverter box, move the energy to the grid, and then essentially go into the residential home. The next slide, I want to emphasize this. You see this big outline. This is a boundary, right? This does not mean that all of it will be covered in solar panels. It just means it will be within these lines that the solar panels would be. It's too early to say where in this area. We have to do many tests, surveys, and so forth, and our engineering construction team will then do a layout to see what's the most effective and efficient way to place the panels within this boundary. But again, it does not mean that every aspect of this will be covered in panels. Okay, with that, I'll give it to Matt to talk about some of the benefits of it.
So some of the benefits of projects such as this are shared revenue payments. Wisconsin has a specific process for large-scale energy projects where they generate specific amount of payments that go to towns and counties that host these projects. So a 200 megawatt project would generate $800,000 in tax revenue. The formula is that 58% goes to the county and 42% goes to the town. These are annual payments that are paid out every year. They're unrestricted aid payments that go to the town and county. They can essentially be used for whatever the town board or county board would like to do with the money. And this formula is ran into state law. This is what currently is set at. It's $4,000 for 1 megawatt. We're aiming to do 200. So that is $800,000, and then it's split between the county and town. And so it'd be split between Adams County and the town of Rome. I've been working in Wisconsin the last few years in community outreach. I've seen other communities use this money for road repair, snow plowing, long-term building projects if needed. It can be a pretty substantial amount of money over a 25-year period. For this project, there is increased economic activity during construction. It's usually a few hundred construction jobs. Construction of a project like this is about 18 to 24 months. So it's usually a few hundred construction jobs. Long term, because the project requires so little maintenance, we're estimating about 4 full-time employees, living in the area and maintaining the project. So it's many people during construction, and then operations and maintenance. It would be estimated for, and it's simply because the project doesn't require much upkeep. But operations and maintenance staff do monitor the project, replace panels, listen to community questions or concerns, and we have site managers. And I will emphasize too that when we do have operational projects, we are able to monitor the project on site with our operations and maintenance team. And then at our headquarters, we have a team that monitors every single solar panel for every single project. And they can communicate with local emergency responders. There's a contact person for a project. So just had really wanted to emphasize that. So projects like this, especially this size, it goes through the Wisconsin Public Service Commission permitting process. The Public Service Commission has approved 14 or 15 solar projects in the last few years. One just was verbally approved recently. They have pretty extensive experience in reviewing solar projects. The Public Service Commission staff, as well as Department of Natural Resources, review all the applications that come in for these projects. We have to provide extensive studies of wildlife, bat, soil, vegetation. All of that is publicly viewable during the PSC process. It's usually a year-long process as well. There's public comment periods and such, but then members of the public can view 99.9% of the studies on the public docket. So I just want to emphasize it's a very rigorous process we have in Wisconsin, which is good. It holds companies accountable to make sure that good projects are being developed and built to good standards. So it ends up being quite a bit amount of studies needed for these projects. And I'll emphasize, we're still pretty early in this project, and so many of these studies have not even taken place, but would be done in the near future. So I help our team with stakeholder outreach. This project is actually pretty early on, so we often work with landowners. We reach out to county staff, talk with county supervisors. Obviously, we're here informing the town board. We do work with school districts in Wisconsin as well as other states. We have a Native American tribal outreach team as well. We're a little unique in that we have a team that specializes in that. So we make sure to avoid cultural resources. We evaluate land to see how likely it is something would be found. And so we have a team that specializes in that. In the future, in the very near future, we'd be working with the local chamber of commerce. We often work with fire EMS services. We work with sheriff's departments to make sure that they're aware of our project and see how we could potentially coordinate and how we could potentially help them. I help a lot with sponsorships and donations across the Midwest. I help our team in 6 states. So what we try to do as a company is really try to get engaged in the communities throughout this process of in development or in construction, during operations and maintenance. So we've worked with local school districts on, new laptops, new STEM equipment. We've helped food pantries across the region. It's something I'm very passionate about. Youth athletics. We work really closely with Sheriff EMS services on new equipment they may need. We like to sponsor community events. We work with 4-H, FFA, volunteer fire departments. We're passionate about getting involved in the local community because if a project, gets developed here, permitted, in construction, operating, our staff would be here for decades. And so we do want to be a good partner in the local area. And so I think that's the end of our formal presentation, but then we're more than happy to take questions. We have a lot of time booked for questions since it's, it is the first time that, the town board has heard about this project. We have substantial time to answer questions from you guys and then members of the public.
Okay, I have some initial ones that we have received. So I'd like to just have an opportunity to start off with those, the initial ones that we have formally received. First of all, when you as a company select a site, what factors do you look at? And what do you do as a community assessment, knowing that we're primarily tourism and recreation? How did this fit, that you selected this particular site?
So this site particular is a little unique as the landowner reached out to us.
What landowner would that be?
Meteor Timber,
Okay.
right? And they had the land available. But again, usually when we select sites, as I shared, the 3 main components that are usually taken in are, is there enough land available, right? Can we secure enough land? can we connect to the grid, and do we have a customer that would buy it? Those are usually the three factors that we get in as we get through the project and we start having these conversations. We try to get an assessment for the community and their, how they feel about the project.
Okay. The next one would be, thank you. The next one would be, with a stated commercial operation date targeted for January 2027. Can you please talk about, or can you please talk to your more near-term timeline for when you would be expecting to file applications and plans with the PSC?
It would be, we're still making studies. So with our timeline, so when you start creating a project, we have what we call a standard timeline, right, of a schedule, assuming the timeframes all are the same. There's different things that impact us in different times of the year. So right now, again, it's just an estimate. If all studies, the studies that we need to file an application are completed, it would be towards the end of this year, early next year.
So end of 2023, early 2024.
Correct.
Okay, and then looking at the map you provided, are the parcels you've identified the ones that you started entering into leases for or to purchase?
This boundary, so usually the boundary doesn't include, it includes both that we've already leased or are targeting to lease. In this particular case, since the landowner owns all of it and reached out to us, it's the majority of it will be leased.
Okay, thank you. And in your preference, you've referenced a number of studies related to environmental assessments. What other assessments would your company be doing or have you done relating to that project, such as roadway assessments?
So we would be doing all these type of, like you mentioned, tribal wildlife. We do geotech, right, engineering construction. So there's a lot of, to test the soil, see if there's bad rock, different things like that. When we start talking about road assessments, I want to get a more, can you get more specific on what you mean regarding the road assessment?
Wildlife, environmental, water.
Yeah.
Construction impact.
Construction impact?
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Maybe take this.
yeah, so we do, wildlife studies. We do, vegetation and such. What our company does is, even though it's a state permitting process, we want to work with local governments as well. So what we do is we aim to have, it's called the joint development agreement, that covers like road use agreements where roads would potentially be used during construction, and working with the local governments on what roads are best, because I know right down the middle is one of the main corridors for the community. So as we get farther along in the process and, nearing permitting and during permitting, our company would absolutely work with Adams County as well as the town of Rome on some of those items like road use agreements. That's typically one of the main components of a joint development agreement, is figuring out what roads are the best to utilize, especially when there is a little bit heavier like traffic or like construction traffic. We want to make sure everyone's safe, and we want to use roads that are better for the community so that we're having a little impact as we can.
Okay. And then my final question, well, then the rest of the board will, could you please share with us who, at what time or when you started the conversation with Adams County about this project?
So we just had our first introductory meeting. Like I said, we're very early on. So we just had a meeting with county staff in late May. So
County staff?
Correct. Yeah. So we typically reach out, to understand like if what has been done previously in the county or the region. So yeah, our first meeting was only, 3 weeks ago or so.
Okay, thank you very much. And now the rest of the board, please proceed. Yes.
Yeah, Matt, I have three or four questions. I'm serviced, my electric is by Adams Columbia Electric Cooperative. I was wondering if this project goes through, would that impact my bill? Would I see a lower bill in the future?
So do you want?
So it depends on who the customer is, right? We don't have a customer for this project yet, right? But that's all that will all be by determined by your provider, not by us.
Okay.
But solar is the most cost-effective way to make energy, utility-scale solar.
And I see in your proposal you don't have a battery plant shown there. Is there a battery plant in your plan, or is it just going to be whenever the sun shines, then you can provide electricity to the grid.
Yeah, sure. So most solar projects, the good thing is that they're agile. You can always add a battery at the end. So normally what we do is we'll start the project as a solar project, and as our team starts having discussion with potential customers, they'll say, hey, we want a battery. Okay, do we have the land for it? We could always add the battery. It's one of those items that you can always add later on. But right now it's just a solar array.
And if there was a battery plant, do you know what type it would be? Would it be flooded lead acid, or would it be something else more
The
exotic?
specs of it, I don't know. It would be a 100 megawatt battery. It's usually half the size of the project.
Matt, did you have something to add to the first question about that?
Yeah, so just had want to reemphasize. So like what we do is we either, when we get a project, developed, permitted, construction, operating, what we prefer to do is we often operate the project, then sell the electricity. Here in Wisconsin, many of the electric utilities are preferring to purchase the project outright. So that is a potential scenario. So, there are electric utilities, in Wisconsin who, seek to purchase the project and maintain it themselves. So that's happened in neighboring Wood County with the Wood Solar project. So that is a possibility here, but it's too early to say which way it would go, if we would own and operate if we get the permit, or if it could be potentially a customer like electric utility who would own it. And that has its own separate approval process with the state of Wisconsin and the Public Service Commission.
And then my last question is, do you already have a lease agreement with Meteor Timber or not?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I have a question. What approvals and agreements, or do you need from the town to move forward with this?
So projects over 100 megawatts have to go through the Public Service Commission process. So they have jurisdiction. Once it hits 100 megawatts or over, we have to go through that process. There's no other option for us. Even though it is a state permitting process, that's why we do want to work with the local governments as much as we can. That's why we aim to do those joint development agreements where it's covering road use agreements. We could work through, potential setbacks from roads and such, can cover like decommissioning. There are many of those things we have to do with the state anyways, but what it does is allows us to work with the local governments to see where we could partner and collaborate with. And that joint development agreement would be also a legally binding agreement between our company and then the local governments as well. So we'd be aiming to that. And like I said, we're really early in the process. Usually as we get closer to permitting and have a better idea of where, panels would likely be in this boundary, we'd be hosting an open house. What we would do is we would have specialists from our team, from the environmental specialists, land service specialists, engineering and construction specialists, who could answer in-depth questions that community members or community leaders might have.
And just as a follow-up, so when the PSC hearings happen, is the town invited to those? Do they have ability to give their impact on what they think the project will be?
Yes, yep. Towns can provide their input during public comment periods too.
I had one more follow-up too. When you show the land that you have with the yellow outline, you say that might not be all solar panels. What would be the intent or usage for the land that wouldn't be solar panels?
It'll be given back to the landowner, right? So normally, for example, don't quote me on this, but let's say there's a little over 2,000 acres for a 200 megawatt project. We usually use about 1,000, so only half, right? Now, whatever we don't use, we say, okay, we're only using 1,000. Here's the other 1,000 you can go back to. Now, if it's also buildable, right? The 2,000 acres, after we do our survey, say, hey, 800 may not be buildable. So there's all these different things that go into play. But whatever we don't use is given back to the landowner.
And because this is a rather unique situation, usually it's a different process where we have, a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen landowners. Because as of right now, we think we have significantly extra land. It allows us more flexibility in our engineering and construction team, more flexibility so that depending on how many buildable acres out of that 2,000 or so acres, we have additional flexibility to do potentially larger setbacks where needed. And there is the option too for essentially have built-in visual screening, because for other projects, we may use trees or bushes. Here, there's already trees, so there's like a built-in visual screening where what we could potentially do is utilize land and have panels, but then on the outside the perimeter keep the trees there, so it's a natural visual screen already.
Thank you. Dan?
So you mentioned that potentially you would either keep the solar farm yourself and then sell the energy to the utility companies, or potentially if a buyer came along from one of the utilities to sell that. If the sales process, I know we're jumping like years down the road, but if that sales process were to happen, does that payment of the $800,000 a year remain, or is that then renegotiated or redone with the new owner, depending upon who that new owner is?
Yeah, that doesn't change. That's a state, that's a state requirement. So if a customer buys the project outright, everything that was in an agreement, they have to get approved by the PSC to be able to accept it, and they have to maintain, the requirement is to keep and honor all those agreements.
And then just sort of a question on, your partnerships with like schools. Obviously, in Town of Rome is a part of the Nacusa School District, but there's also Adams Friendship School District down in Adams, and then there are several private schools up in the Wisconsin Rapids area that do have staff and student families that live here in the Town of Rome. Do you partner with both the public and the private schools that are in the areas, or do you strictly look at the public schools in the area?
We look for different type of partnerships, nonprofit organizations, school districts, and so forth. There's no specific route. Normally when we have these conversations, we get a hint, hey, look, there's a need here. Is there any way that we can help? We want to be an active participant in the community that we're going to be part of potentially for the next 3 decades, right? So it's really having these conversations and kind of guiding us, saying, hey, look, we may have a more need in this particular area than this other area. How can we help? And then we'll figure something out.
Thank you.
I have a question regarding operational issues, I guess. Solar panels obviously have to stay and remain clean. What do you use to clean them? And if there's any kind of runoff, do you capture that runoff and retain it on site?
So in some areas of the country, they do have issues with dust in like the Southwest. Here in Wisconsin, because we get enough rain and snow, that essentially washes the panels. So we won't have to use any chemicals or anything like that to wash the panels. The rain and the snow will do that. And apologies, your second question again. I'm sorry.
And is there any runoff from the panels itself that need to be retained on site?
So what we do is during the permitting process, we have storm water management plans and like runoff plans. So what we do is for most of these projects in Wisconsin and other states, we often use like a native grass seed mix underneath the panels that actually absorb more runoff, more rain than like traditional row crops do. And so we do have like we have to do a stormwater management plan so that we are not impacting neighboring properties or anything like that.
Okay. One more question.
Yeah.
Who chose the name for the project?
Good question.
We another team member who is early in the process chose it. So
Based on any input whatsoever?
I'm not sure.
Can the community have input on changing the name of the project?
I don't.
We could take it back and find out. It's just that it's in our systems and we'll just have to update it, but
I mean, I think
we could look into it.
we could look into it to change it.
I'd like you to do that, please.
Yeah, I mean, we can and change it internally, and yeah.
I guess I want to clarify for the public that we do not say yes or no to this project. The Public Service Commission says yes or no to this project. The town board does not have any authority to stop this project. You need to understand that up front. Okay? I just want that clarified.
However, Next Era does want to work with the municipality.
And we want to work with them. And I guess, and I don't want to speak for all the members of the board, but I think everybody that's sitting up here wants to make sure that we can get the best solution for the town if this project moves forward that we possibly can. And we're all committed to that.
Madam
Yes.
Chair, somewhat related to that, for the presenters. So you had given a timeline, you expected the application to be end of 2023, 2024. Can you just speak to your expectations as far as timing for the JDA negotiation?
So typically we could start it potentially a little bit before permitting, but then during permitting we would we have a legal team that helps us with all these applications, and what they would do is provide like a first copy or first draft of a joint development agreement, and then provide it to the town. And essentially, there can be negotiations between the town and then our legal team of seeing what's feasible and works well for both sides. So usually for joint development agreements in Wisconsin for these types of projects, usually the goal is to have them wrapped up by the time the Public Service Commission votes on the project. The permitting process in Wisconsin with the Public Service Commission is about a year-long process after we submit the application. So it's a fair amount of time. It's not a short amount of time. There's plenty of time to work with the local governments on agreements and such.
Right, well, and I guess I'm asking the question because there is a somewhat of a balance, right, as we look at the PSC's process and timing for getting that JDA negotiated. In one sense, if you start too early, you're not gonna have the specifics enough to get into the details. That's fine. On the other hand, there's deadlines, right, for raising an objection. Part of why we go into a JDA is because then we get ahead of that, work through those differences, and get a JDA in place. And so my question comes from the standpoint of what can we do in advance, right? And what can we know regarding your expectations for actually then having these conversations with your legal team to work through a JDA.
Yeah.
So that's why I asked.
So I think the best approach for this is once we know we're going to file, I think we have those conversations, understanding the timeline, right? Because again, the end of 2023 could be October, November, December, beginning. So there's several months there. So the variance is a lot. So I think we have a conversation once we know, hey, we're going to submit next month. We could start sharing the drafts at that point in time of what they will look like, and then knowing that there might be some changes, but at least it won't be the first time the first time you'll see it will be then, and not 6 months into the process. And I think it was just that constant communication between us and collaboration.
Thank you.
And if I can add one additional aspect too, so the full permitting process is about a year-long process, even before we file the application, which is called a Certificate of Public Necessity and Convenience. So it's a wordful. We had to do a pre-application with DNR, and so when we submit that, we have to wait 3 months anyways before we can file with the PSC. So you guys will, like, when we file that and we have an estimate of like this is the land we would use, we would have plenty of time before we even file an application where our team can reach out, and so that way the town and as well as the county has substantial time, more than a year to work with our legal team and our developer Danilo to see what works best and such. So there's plenty of time.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask about trails. I see Monroe Prairie and Snow Bandits in the audience.
Yes.
There are many recreational trails that are all through this property. And is there a means or a way to maintain access to those recreational trails through the project and after?
Yeah. So I can answer that one. So we can absolutely work with snowmobile groups.
An ATV group, our ATV
Yes,
club too.
sorry,
Okay.
ATV groups as well. And so for parts of this land, there will be like wildlife corridors as well between different groupings of solar panels. So we could work with those types of organizations to see like what the current routes are, to see if we can use essentially see how we can work together, because again, we won't need all this land. You know, maybe there's land that we can specifically, you know, choose not to utilize, but we'd be absolutely willing to work with those groups. And when projects are operating, again, that's very low maintenance, and there will be like access gravel roads as well. So we're absolutely willing to work with local groups such as that.
We call that process like an exclusion process. So once they're done doing their tests and they say, hey, this is what's buildable, we'll really know what trails can be affected, right? Because maybe some of the trails are in unbuildable areas. But we'll definitely, once we know that, it's okay, this is excluded because of the trail, and we could definitely do that. We do that today.
Can I ask so one question on the operational assets and projects and development slide. Can you speak to the utility scale solar energy center that you have currently? And then I realize in development means a number of things, right? There's a lot of different stages.
Yep.
Can you speak to some of the projects that are in development and where they're located?
Sure. Let's start with the 5, right? We have one in Waupaca County. We have one in Chippewa Falls. We have one in Wood County.
Where in Wood?
In the town of Sherry.
Thank you.
We have one in Grant County, and this one.
Thank you.
Right. Those are the 5.
The one that's in Grant County, that's your latest project that just wrapped up in 2020, in this year, right?
Well, we're under construction.
Oh, okay.
Where we're still under construction is expected to go online in February 2024.
I've been following that one
Yep.
when I learned of you, so.
And I think you wanted the utility.
Grant.
It's
Yeah, the
Point Beach. You could see some
Point
information
Beach.
on it behind one of the
Yep,
factories.
got it. Thank you.
Town of Sherry.
Thank you.
I
I'm
missed the
sorry.
second one.
What was your second one, please? for-
Waupaca Chippewa Falls.
There you go. Thank you. And Emily, did you have, I wanted to ask you, you provided us with a map. Did you have any questions or want to point anything out for anybody in the audience or for the board?
I'm really here to learn. with
All right,
everyone
okay,
else.
that's
But
fine, great.
The map is really just to show a location in town, because it's kind of hard to orientate yourself with that if you're not looking at maps all day, so.
Right, okay, but thank you. I wanted to give you an opportunity if you had any questions, so. We'll get to the audience in just a bit. It's still board time and staff time right now, but did you have any other questions, or our attorney, or did you have anything else that did we want to talk about a utility overlay or anything like that we'll need to take forward for anything at this time, or?
At this moment, I don't.
Okay, thank you. But anything else you wanted to share, or did you have another question you?
Yeah, I'll just add, obviously, oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Did you have?
Oh, I know, I just had want to emphasize, like, obviously we're taking questions and answers here. Like, we'll be able to take questions and answers, do Q&As throughout this process. We'll have
Right.
an open house. You know, we can come back, provide updates as well. So we're more than happy to answer questions community members have, or a town board has, or like
We
the
can
county
have a
has.
town hall and have you come back for more extensive questions and answers and that sort of thing. So if we would call on some folks tonight and give them answer some questions for them now, would you be okay with that now?
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
All
we're-
right, so, somebody raised their hand here. I saw one. Okay, the gentleman here. Could you come up, please? Give us your name and address.
Just sign in on the sheet up here.
Okay, so my question for you gentlemen is this.
Would you please sign in on the
Oh,
sheet first?
certainly.
Before you
And
start
we need your
speaking, and
name,
then
please, for the,
make sure you're
for
speaking to the
treasurer.
My
microphone.
name is Daniel Gradecki,
and your address, please.
360 Night Shield Way.
Thank you.
So you guys have this project that you're proposing, and it's obviously you're going after what you see as a clean and renewable. You're worried about the environment. My question to you is, if you're going to take away 1,000 acres of trees, wildlife habitat, deer, birds, fox, whatever animals are there, how do you justify what you've done? Because obviously we've got a similar project that was right up the road in Saratoga. Those people are not at all pleased, from everything I've read, with the outcome because they did not get the end result that they were promised. So I would like an answer to that. And then kind of in conjunction with that, we as property owners and as taxpayers and residents, we have no say-so in this. We don't have a right to vote on it and say we really don't want it here. Because if the forest is gone, I've driven by that solar farm in Saratoga. It's very unsightly, gentlemen.
Can we,
Okay.
can we allow
So
them to
nonetheless,
answer? Can we-
if you could answer my questions in regards to what I've asked you, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Let's allow, just please ask your question and allow them to answer and not avoid the, okay, not attack, but, thank you.
As it relates to wildlife and or the habitat, environmental, anything like that, that's what we have all the tests and studies that we do. If we understand there's a particular type of wildlife there, we would not build. It'll be considered unbuildable. That's one of the exclusions that we refer to. That's why it's a little too early to be able to say, hey, we have 2,000 acres, but how much can we actually build on there? As it relates to other projects, I can't really comment on it since they're not ours. I shared earlier, we're the largest renewable company in the world. I think it's for a reason. We do it effectively, we do it efficiently, and we work with the communities. We want to give you the product that we provide. I think that's what our brand is all about. What our values talks about is doing the right thing and treating people with respect. If we tell you we're going to build something, if you want screening and so forth, we're not going to build it without what we promise you. So, and as far as having a vote, we're following the state process. This is really outside of our control. You are able to comment when they have the public hearings and share how you feel about the project then.
Go ahead, and then I'm just gonna have our town attorney say something quickly. if you
Yeah,
would.
I can, and I want to add to Danilo to what he said. This timberland is essentially for the landowner like a long-term investment. So this timberland would actually be probably cut within a certain amount of time, anyways, for timber products. And so what they do is, they may have trees for like 40 years, but then what they do at a certain point is that they cut and harvest them and then sell that for timber and lumber resource for different products. So that was their actual original plan. And so what they want to do is have a long-term investment in solar. So say they normally harvested, what they would normally do is, harvest the trees, cut them, and then plant new trees. So there would have been a pretty substantial visual impact already. And so what they want to do is, instead of they want to harvest them and then they want a long-term investment in having solar because they know it's a good long-term investment. So this land would have been impacted within a certain time frame anyways, where it had been cut, it had been cleared, and then trees harvested and then new trees planted. So that would have happened anyways. So in this circumstance, the landowner specifically reached out to lease for solar. Obviously, if this project moves forward and permitted, it'd be a similar situation to what in Wood County, where the trees would be cut and harvested and then be solar instead of timber. But I just really wanted to highlight that these trees are going to be cut in the near future anyways for lumber products.
Can I just respond?
I just wanna make a statement. Just a minute. The town has done everything it can to protect our community, and we know what we are. And these gentlemen are here tonight to make a presentation. We are currently going through comprehensive planning. We know we're tourism and rec, and this is the map. And we are just as unsettled by this as you are, and it's a surprise to all of us. So they asked to make this presentation. All I'm asking is that we just listen to the presentation and ask our questions and not attack one another. That's all I'm saying. So these gentlemen are asking our questions. There's a whole process to this. And just a few years ago, I was gonna ask our attorney to say, and I'm not making a lecture, but I'm saying there's laws that we can't do anything about, and we can have all the planning we want, but there's laws that allow them to do what they're doing with the land that they found. So that's all I simply was gonna ask our attorney to state, but there's things that prevent us from doing certain things that they can do with the land that they find. And so all I'm saying is, please ask your questions. They'll answer what they can. There's public hearing processes that will be further down the road. And just ask your questions kindly, and we'll get the answers that we can for you. All right, and we do what we can to protect what we have. Thank you.
Well, I would say that I do believe that I asked my questions kindly.
Yes.
And I asked them and I sat down, but I would like to respond to your comment about them harvesting the timber. We understand that. Okay, paper company lands do that and they replant. And I think all of us as property owners and as residents have seen that happen. But I would, to be quite honest with you, I would rather see that than black solar panels for as far as the eye can see. So,
The good thing is that we're gonna have visual, so you wouldn't have to see them. And just, I would like to just go back on a statement. This is voluntary, right? These are landowners, whether we're going to a community and asking them if they would like to lease the land. This particular case, this landowner reached out to us, right? This is something he wants to do with his land. So think about landowner rights. If you own land and you want to do something, whether you want to become a dairy farmer now and build a dairy farm there, whatever it is, it's your land, right? So you should have the rights to do that. So we're just, this landowner reached out to us. It's his right to reach out to us, and we're saying, hey, we're assessing the situation. We don't even know. It's very early. We don't even know if it's buildable or not, right? We have a boundary, and we say, okay, we're doing tests, and we're going to go back and say, yes, we can do something, and if we can, we're going to go through the process. From a visual perspective, that's what we can do. You don't have to see them. We'll do, whether, like Matt suggested earlier, there's natural trees that you won't be able to see the panels anyway, or we would plant some type of screening ourselves so you won't have to see that. That's something very common we receive, and if that's a concern, that is definitely something we can accommodate.
Thank you. Anybody else? There's, in the back, please. Will you come up and give your name and your address, please?
My name is Shirley Dorby. My question is,
Your address, please, too.
yeah, it's 163 9th Avenue. So you stated that the revenue is fixed. It's fixed for 20, 25 years. So, and this process may go forward, whether we want to or not, and I'm sure the public hearings will be publicized someplace so we can come. However, how is it going to compensate? That 800,000 is fixed. What about any loss of revenue from the tourism this town may incur? That your studies, I mean, you can't put a value on that and study that because you're going to lose trails, you're going to lose tourism coming in. You may lose people. I've only been here 3 years. I might want to sell. I don't know. So how do you dollarize that? Because this is a small community. And once again, I understand the town board has no saying to this, but I'd like to know that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I can reply.
Oh,
I'm
would you
sorry.
like to reply?
No,
Okay.
you're good.
Oh, did you want to?
Yeah, I'll wait till I can.
Okay.
Like though. Sorry. No, you're good. Not a problem. Yeah, we know there is some impact from these projects. The benefit of having the extra land is that if there's areas that are more used for recreation, we can take that into account to see if we can do larger setbacks. Like if there are specific areas where we could potentially avoid that are used for recreation, like UTV trails, we can take that into consideration with our engineering construction team to see what areas we could potentially avoid. We still have to figure out what acres we could actually build on first, because some of these acres we may find out we can't actually build on.
Right.
And so once we have a better idea of that, we can work with the local organizations to see if we could avoid certain areas or how we could best accommodate. Because some of these areas, once it is operating, and there are access roads, like whether it's gravel or there could be dirt roads that could still be used for like UTV and ATV. Individuals who want to do that, they still could. And I think our company would absolutely be willing to work with those organizations to see, say we're using specific sections of land for the project, it's, you know, it's operating, you know, there's incredibly minimal staff movement. You know, these areas would still be safe and could be utilized by the various like ATV clubs and such. So, like I said, we're more than willing to work with those organizations throughout the process.
Are you able to share with us by chance with, like, for example, the Grant County Solar Project? As part of those agreements, as you're getting into the final stages, I wasn't able to read far enough into that. As part of the agreement, can that be part of the agreement that those trails and that are taken into consideration?
So what I would say is I think that we could definitely talk through that.
Okay.
I think it's still too early. So,
All right, it's
you
too
know,
early. I
because we don't know where. I shared
don't
that
know what
we share we're going to use half of this, like less than half of this land for the 200 megawatts.
Right.
That is a lot of land that's left over.
Right.
The last thing we want to do is if we know we could go around and avoid, impacting a trail, we don't want to do that. But it's good because these are concerns, right? So as we're building this, we could say, hey, engineering construction, make sure you're taking account into not impacting trails, having certain setbacks, not being able to see the panels, right? So for visual screening. But right now, it's really, our goal was to communicate that we've started the process. We've made an agreement with this landowner. And we'll continue to come back as we see like the significance. We got test studies back. We have a potential layout and so forth. And I think that will be more concrete. I would hate to say, it's just not that it's not, it's hard for me to be able to even accommodate or tell you a potential solution for that because that might not even be a problem. So I would say when we come back and we have something more concrete and visual for that, it is. So, and so we don't want to impact your tourism. That's income to you. So that's the last thing that we want to do.
We appreciate that. Thank you. Like you said, it's early in this process, but you're getting the message. So thank you. Yes, Nick.
Related to what you just said, so obviously through this you're going to be doing a number of assessments, one of which is going to be things like roadways, right? And it's not going to be you doing it, right? You're going to have a consulting firm that's doing it and likely preparing a report for you all as you consider it. I would just maybe make the comment that as you start the process with your consultants to do that roadway assessment, if you could get in contact with us so we can start talking about some of these areas of significant impact and where we have concerns, I think we would want to be able to provide that input to you so you can have a assessment prepared that takes into account some of these more significant.
We want as little disruption to the community as possible. That is no issue whatsoever. We could include you as much as you want to be included. There's some communities say, hey, let us know when there's big changes. Come here, 3 times a year. We could come here monthly if you want, right? So to give you changes, sometimes month to month, there's not that many changes. But yes, our goal is you let us know how involved you want to be in the process, and we would definitely communicate, collaborate with you as much as we can.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have additional? So I do have additional comment in regard to roads. So like one of the main components of the joint development agreement is like a road use agreement where we work with the local governments on which roads are best to utilize during construction. And what we do, and part of many of those joint development agreements is, if there is road, damage because of the heavy machinery, our company covers the cost to repair those roads. So for local roads that are utilized during construction, after construction, they'll be evaluated, and if there's damage, we'll replace it. The road should be the same or better after we're done with construction, because we want to make sure there's safe roads for community members and everyone in the area that uses them. So we cover that cost, and that's something that is usually in those joint development agreements as well.
Excellent, thank you. We can take a couple more questions, and then I want to just wrap up with the board in case they thought of anything. Yes, sir, in the back. I didn't.
I was right there, but I've been waiting to get
I didn't
up
even
here.
see your hand go up, Matt. I'm very sorry. Give your name and address, please, for the clerk
Matthew
treasurer.
Harn, and I got my address is 141. I live within a mile of the project.
Okay.
What I'm hearing is
What was your address again, Matt?
141 14th Drive.
Thank you. All right.
45 years ago, we were hearing the same thing from Isaacson. They promised us everything, and then they took off. Remember? Anybody here remember that? When Isaacson was trying to come into town of Rome. They said they were gonna do all kinds of stuff. They didn't do it. I don't know you guys, but I don't trust you guys. Our vision says promote attractive destination that seamlessly blends the convenience of contemporary living with nature and its timeless charm and rustic Wisconsin. As soon as you come into Rome, what are you going to see the first thing? Solar panels. First thing. That's not what we're at. Rome is rustic. Rome is green. Rome is all around. This is not Rome, people. People on Camelot are going to hear the noise of the solar panels. People, their land all around the shooting range, there was a sign put up right here across the industrial park. A sign put up for land for sale. Remember that? A year ago or 2 years ago? All the land around here was sold because I tried to buy some and it was sold. It sold that quick. So this land was sold from Meteor Timber to people, to homes. Mm-hmm. You put solar panels in it and you say that we can't be stopped, well, then we're going to have to try to do something about it. Yeah. Something about it, because we don't want the solar panels, especially around blacktop roads. That don't make any sense. This land is for development. It's for homes. It's for the rustic animals. You put up what Saratoga, look at what they got up there. It's all fenced in. It's terrible. The noise is terrible. The noise goes from the northwest to the southeast. You guys are going to hear this. It's in your backyard. That's how much noise it's going to make, all in Camelot. All this noise it's going to make. There's got to be a way that we can say, no, we don't need this in Rome. How come you're not in Saratoga? They're right across the street. Why not up there? Why are you just targeting Rome? Another big question. Another big question is,
All right, I think I'll give you just a few more minutes. We're getting close to our
do
regular.
you understand where I'm coming from?
We've
not
heard
Rome.
you. We understand what you're saying, Matt. Thank you.
Just let me clarify his statement. I did not say you can't stop it. I said we are not the permitting people for the project. We do not control whether the project goes forward or not. The Public Service Commission does that. So when there are public hearings about this project and you feel as vehemently as you do, I please ask you to go to those hearings and make your statements. That's what those hearings are for.
Please, I got
we've got to move
How
on.
long was this meeting put up? How long did you guys hear about this meeting?
Well, we just found out about their availability just
We
prior
should
to
be
being
meeting in
able.
the town hall.
When there's a public hearing, this was an informational meeting when we found out their availability and we found out about it. That's what we did. When there's a public hearing, we'll be able to post for a larger meeting. We can do a town hall meeting. Are you available to come back for another town hall meeting? One more gentleman. Oh, yes.
Possible and try to provide additional information. So I did want to emphasize, like, I know some land in this area that was potentially timber land before, has been sold for housing development. I'm aware of that, and some has been used for that, and this company may have done that in the past. What they specifically want to do is they want to lease for solar. So they would rather they would rather lease for solar because they would still own the land. It generates revenue. So it's fundamentally their choice. Like, they could have chosen not to go with solar and sold for housing development, but they wanted this option. I did want to address for noise. The Public Service Commission has standards where we have to be under a certain noise level at neighboring property lines that are not part of the project. So during the day, it's a maximum of 50 decibels. That's like the equivalent of your refrigerator humming. At night, when there will be almost no noise because the panels aren't generating electricity, the inverters are not being utilized, there's almost no sound. And so we have to meet those sound standards. As the projects get approved through permitting, the Public Service Commission states, different items that we have to meet, and one of those is sound. So we have to have panels or inverters far enough away from people, or the inverters at least, where we have to be at that 50 decibels or less at a non-participating landowner.
50 decibels?
Yes.
How many total acres do you have outlined on that picture currently?
It's a little over 2,000. 2,100. I don't know off the top of my head, but it's a little over 2,000. I would also like to just share something, right? From an energy industry perspective, renewable energy has to take place. Fossil fuel is becoming more expensive. I think someone shared what will your bill be, right? One of the oldest infrastructures in U.S. history is the energy grid, right? They're doing coal plants, fossil fuels, gas plants, and so forth. Solar energy and wind energy is the cheapest route. So as they start decommissioning coal plants, for example, an energy company has a coal plant. It's generating 200 megawatts for them, as an example. When it says, hey, you have a coal plant, it's too costly, you need to remove it, and they decommission it, they still need to find somewhere else to get 200 megawatts for, because their residents are not all of a sudden going to start using less energy, right? That is why solar is, you're seeing it all over Wisconsin. I share with you how many projects we have. That's why you have all these other companies coming in. And it's not just Wisconsin, it's across the U.S. Because these energy companies need to find ways when they're told that, hey, your coal plant in 2027 has to be shut off, or your gas plant, or whatever the case is, they need to find replacement for that energy. So in essence, I'm not saying that it might be here, but overall, you're going to see solar and wind more commonly in the next 5 to 10 years, because energy companies need this capacity to replace the capacity they're losing from these fossil fuels.
Right, there's sir, I can't, there's one man that's had his hand up for a very long time now. He's the last man I can call, the gentleman that I can call on is the man in the back there, because we have to move on to our regularly scheduled meeting.
Hi, all right, I'm Charles Blazes. I live at 927 Akron Drive, maybe a half a mile from where you're doing this. I just bought property 2 years ago. This just ain't, the most traffic is gonna be past my house. I mean, this really, what's it gonna do to the property value for me? I mean, we're not even gonna get anything from it. We're not even gonna prosper from it at all. What's cool? I just don't understand how that's going to do anything for us.
If you want to address that.
And as far as the power plants going, I've worked at power plants. They close one down, they make the next one a little bit bigger. That's what they do for power. As far as the solar panels go, I raise honeybees. This will shoot the hell out of my honeybees in this area now.
So a couple of things. Yes, you're right on the solar plant, on the power plants issue. That's what the utility companies would do. Is you need more energy, you need to build a bigger power plant, right? Again, it's fossil fuel. It's not as cost effective as solar or wind. When you talked about property value, there was a study done a couple years ago as solar's projects started coming, and then a renowned appraiser in New York, Illinois. She's she's certified. Patricia McCarr. She's certified to appraise anywhere in the world. She's a chairwoman of the board of Illinois for appraisals, and did an extensive study of, hey, are solar projects impacting property value? And her results were none. There's no proof that a solar project drops your property value. I understand it's difficult, but from someone that is an expert in this area, right, and was asked by her state, by corporations to do this assessment, that's what her study showed.
Well, does the board have any more? Yeah. Do the board members have any? I'm gonna thank you all for attending. I appreciate you coming out this evening. Again, this was very last minute. We didn't have much time to even think of it or find out about it or get much information about it. Thank you very much for asking to give us this presentation and giving us this information. As we move forward, we'll schedule more meetings, more public meetings, You'll give us more town hall information. We'll get out as much as we can, find out as much more as we possibly can, and share it with you. And this meeting is adjourned for this evening. Thank you.
Meeting adjourned 5:04 PM.